They told everyone I was unstable, that I had episodes, that it was better this way, that I wouldn't handle it well. They rewrote my story before I had the chance to live it, before I could even speak. And everyone believed them.
Because it was easier that way.
I wasn't invited. Not even a text. Not even a whisper. But the groom, he waited. Long after the music played. Long after she walked down the aisle.
He waited for me.
Not for approval. Not for spectacle. Just for me. My name is Haley Monroe. I'm 29 and I live in Portland, Oregon. And this isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about what happens when silence is finally broken and someone, somewhere, sees you for who you truly are. It's strange how people love neat endings. They want the black sheep to stay lost. They want the messy sibling to remain the punchline. They want the ones who left the dinner table to never come back. But what happens when that person doesn't disappear? What happens when she grows? When she loves deeper than before? When she learns to laugh again, even if it's just with herself? They didn't invite me to the wedding. My own cousin. The one I shared a bunk bed with for 12 summers. The one who braided my hair before school dances. The one who cried in my lap the day her father died. She sent invites to 138 people. I wasn't one of them. My aunt told people I was off-grid. My uncle said she wouldn't come even if we asked. My mother said nothing at all. It wasn't that they forgot me. They chose to erase me. But him, the man she was marrying, he remembered everything. He remembered my laugh in the kitchen. He remembered my playlists on road trips. He remembered how I looked at people like they mattered. And he waited. Even as she walked down the aisle. Even as the guests stood. Even as the preacher cleared his throat. He waited. I know what you're thinking. Why would someone wait for a person who wasn't even invited? Why would a groom pause his life for the ghost of a girl no one wanted there? Because some things aren't forgotten. Some things grow quietly in the background, like vines through concrete. And when the moment comes, they bloom. I didn't expect to go. I didn't even know the wedding was that day. Not until I saw the post. A photo. All white. All smiles. All lies. I should have stayed home. I should have let them win. I should have remained their favorite scapegoat. But something in me stirred. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was something pure. Older. Like dignity waking up from a long nap. I didn't put on makeup. Didn't wear a dress. Didn't even bring a gift. I just went. I walked into a room that wasn't meant for me. Past whispers. Past turned faces. Past stares that wanted me to shrink. But I didn't.
Not that day.
And that's when he saw me, the groom, standing at the altar, hands folded, eyes restless. And when our eyes met, he smiled. A slow, almost broken smile. And then he did something no one expected. He stepped down. He walked away from the ceremony. He walked past the flower girl, past the photographers, past the gasps. He walked straight to me. Haley, he said, like it was the only word he'd been waiting to say all day. I wasn't invited, I said quietly. I know, he replied, but I waited anyway. And in that moment, it didn't matter how many people didn't see me. One person did. And that changed everything. I wasn't always the one they whispered about. At one point, I was the golden girl. Straight A's. Flawless piano recitals. College scholarship offers pinned to the fridge like trophies. Everyone thought I'd become a doctor. A pediatrician, maybe. Because I was good with kids. Because I smiled at strangers. Because I made people feel safe. Haley's going to make us proud, my dad would say at BBQs, slapping his friends on the back while I stood there with perfect posture, grinning through braces and expectations. But the thing no one saw was how loud the silence became at night. How the pressure felt like glass under my skin. How I'd cry in the campus library bathroom, mouth covered just so no one heard. I didn't fail out. I left. On a cold Tuesday in November, I packed up my dorm room and left. No goodbye. No letter. Just a text to my mom. I need to breathe. I'm sorry. Her reply came an hour later. We'll talk when you're ready to stop acting like a child. That was 4 years ago. At first, they told people I was traveling. She's just taking time to find herself, my aunt would say at church. But when months turned into years, the tone changed. We don't really talk about that anymore. She always was emotional. She gave up so much. What a shame. What they didn't say, what they never dared to say, was that I was drowning before I ever left. That I wasn't trying to escape them. I was trying to survive me. My cousin Amelia, the bride, she understood once. We were two halves of the same breath, back when we were kids. We'd build blanket forts and whisper our dreams under them. She wanted to be a wedding planner. I wanted to write novels. We both wanted to be seen. But something changed when I left. She stopped texting, stopped liking my posts,
Stop defending me when people asked.
I became the cracked frame on the family wall. Still there, but uncomfortable to look at. I moved in with a friend's mom in Portland. Got a part-time job at a bookstore. Started walking to clear my mind. No one visited. No one called. Birthdays passed like forgotten street signs. For them, I was an embarrassment. A story not worth retelling. But quietly, without a map, I began again. No college degree. No 5-year plan. Just me, a stack of notebooks, and the unshakable ache to feel like I mattered. I started tutoring seniors on how to use their phones. It was simple work, unpaid. At first, I'd sit beside them in the community center, watching their wrinkled fingers fumble across glowing screens. Don't worry, I'd say. We'll figure it out together. And maybe I wasn't wearing a white coat, but for the first time, I was helping people again. They didn't know my family, didn't care what I dropped out of, didn't ask why I left. They just looked at me like I was real. And that was everything. When I sent Amelia a message a year later, just to say happy birthday, she didn't reply. But I saw she read it. That tiny scene under my words felt like a knife. I didn't try again, because I was done begging for space at a table I helped build. And still, on Christmas, my mom sent a group photo in the family chat. Everyone in red pajamas, matching mugs, smiles stretched wide. I wasn't in it, but my name was mentioned, in a joke. Don't worry, no existential crises this year, someone had commented. No one corrected them. No one deleted it. I stared at the screen for hours. And then I turned it off. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore.
Not to them.
Not to anyone. But deep down, buried in a place I didn't want to admit existed, I still wondered if anyone missed me. If anyone wished I'd walk through that door again. Especially Amelia, the cousin who once promised to make me her maid of honor. The girl who said, "We'll never be like them. We'll be better." I thought we would be. But now she was the one keeping the gate locked. And I was the name they said like a warning. She's just taking a break. We don't talk about that anymore. But one day, without planning, without ceremony, I stopped waiting to be invited back. Because sometimes, starting over quietly is louder than any apology you'll never hear. It started with a flyer. Plain white paper taped to a light pole outside the bookstore where I worked. Tech help for seniors, volunteers needed, no experience required. I didn't think much of it. I was on my break, holding a cup of lukewarm tea, and trying to decide whether to go home or keep pretending I had plans. But something about the word help caught me. Not just volunteer, not support.
Help.
Simple. Human. So I showed up. It was a Thursday afternoon. Rainy, of course. Portland always is. I wore jeans and an old hoodie. No makeup. No expectations. Just curiosity and a little hope. They paired me with a woman named Marla. 83. Sharp tongue. Wild gray curls. She had no patience for anyone but somehow still asked a million questions. "This machine hates me," she muttered, poking her iPad with a chipped fingernail. "I swear it's got a personal vendetta." I laughed. "Let's make peace with it then. One screen at a time." She squinted at me. "You're too young to be patient. What's your story?" I didn't answer. Not really. Just said, still writing it. Every week, I showed up. Same community center. Same group of elders trying to FaceTime grandkids, check blood test results, or play Scrabble online. It was slow, sometimes frustrating, but strangely grounding. One day, Marla finally managed to open her email on her own. She gasped. Her hands trembled. She clicked on an old message. A video. Her son's voice came through the speaker. "Mom, I miss you. I'm sorry I haven't called. I figured this might be easier." She watched in silence. And when it ended, she looked at me, eyes wet, lip trembling. "You brought my baby into my living room," she whispered. It didn't make headlines, but it mattered. That one moment did something to me. Not instantly, not like in the movies, but slowly, over months, I began feeling like a person again, like someone whose presence made a dent in the world. I started designing simple guides for the center, step-by-step tutorials with illustrations. Nothing fancy, just little tools to make their lives easier. They started calling me the tech angel. I laughed every time, but inside, I felt something return.
Dignity.
Not pride. Not yet. Just the quiet sense that I belonged somewhere. Even if it was only in that musty room with broken chairs and buzzing fluorescent lights. One day, I brought in a batch of chocolate chip cookies. Marla told everyone I'd make a terrible housewife because I burnt the bottoms. I replied, "Luckily, I'm not auditioning for that role." They all howled. And I did too. Not out of politeness. Out of joy. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't pretending. The center coordinator asked if I could train other volunteers. I said yes before I thought about it. Soon I was teaching 4 people. Then 7. Then 12. We built a little system. Seniors booked time slots. Volunteers rotated. Progress was tracked on a giant whiteboard. I called the project Bright Connect, because connection should feel like sunlight. I didn't post about it on social media.
Didn't tell my family.
Didn't even update my LinkedIn. It wasn't about validation. It was about healing. One tap. One smile. One confused old man asking me, "Wait, so I don't need a fax machine anymore?" "No, Carl," I'd reply. "You're officially living in the future." And he'd fist bump me like we were in a Marvel movie. I wasn't rich. I wasn't celebrated. But I was at peace. And somehow, that felt like a bigger achievement than any degree they wanted me to frame. Every so often, I'd open that family group chat just to see if anyone had noticed. They hadn't. Amelia posted a selfie with a wedding dress. Mom sent memes. My brother shared his golf scores. No one asked where I was. No one cared that I had built something. But still, I showed up every week. To the center.
To the people.
To myself. Because some things are worth building quietly. Growth came quietly. Not with press releases or champagne toasts, but with clipboards, spreadsheets, and chipped mugs filled with instant coffee. What started with a single volunteer shift grew into a registered nonprofit in under 2 years. Bright Connect wasn't just a community project anymore. It was a movement. We launched 2 more hubs. One in Beaverton. One in Eugene. I created a digital scheduling system that even our most skeptical seniors loved. Our monthly attendance tripled in 9 months. We were onboarding 1,200 seniors per month, teaching them everything from online banking to digital art. It wasn't glamorous. It was real. A woman named Rosa learned how to email her granddaughter in Argentina. A widower named Harold started his own YouTube channel on model train building. He had 4,000 subscribers before I even knew it. We had a 78% email open rate, higher than some Fortune 500 companies. People wanted to stay connected because they finally could. We partnered with a local tech startup for free tablets. We secured a grant from the state. I gave my first public talk at a small nonprofit summit. The room clapped. I shook hands. I even got business cards printed. Haley Monroe, founder and program director. Bright Connect. For the first time, I had a title that felt like it belonged to me.
But not everyone saw it that way.
My mom called for the first time in a year. The conversation lasted 6 minutes. 3 of those were spent asking me if I was still doing that computer hobby. I told her about the new grant. about the feature in the local paper.
She paused.
Oh, well, that's nice. But when are you going back to school? And just like that, I was 19 again, crying in a dorm bathroom. Invisible. I sent Amelia an invitation to our spring fundraiser. A beautiful event, candlelit tables, testimonials, fresh tulips in mason jars. She didn't come.
Didn't reply.
But I saw her Instagram story that night. A boomerang of her at a wine bar, clinking glasses with bridesmaids. Caption: surrounded by the real ones. I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. Then I stood up, tucked the leftover name tags into a box, and swept the floor myself. A few weeks later, I bumped into my brother at Trader Joe's. He was in town visiting our parents. He hugged me like nothing had happened, asked if I wanted to grab coffee. We sat in his rental car, sipping lattes. I heard you're doing some sort of tech support thing for old people? He grinned. Real noble work. I smiled politely, didn't correct him, because I was tired of explaining a life they had already decided wasn't good enough. I don't think they ever saw me beyond my usefulness. When I was a kid, I was smart for them. A reflection.
A brag. But now?
Now I was something they didn't understand. And instead of leaning in, they leaned away. My aunt called me the free spirit of the family in a comment under a photo of my dog. Free spirit. Code for, we don't take her seriously.
I used to cry about that.
Not anymore. Now, I just show up. To board meetings. To speaking panels. To early mornings at the center where I brew coffee and untangle charging cords with one hand while replying to emails on my phone. The people who mattered were the ones who kept showing up, too. Volunteers like Jay, who drove 40 minutes every Saturday to run the print help desk. Seniors like Alice, who called me her digital daughter. Supporters like Sarah, the coffee shop owner who donated pastries every second Wednesday without fail. They saw me, not as a dropout, not as a disappointment, but as a builder, a listener, a leader. At our 2-year anniversary event, someone asked if I had ever imagined it would get this big. I laughed.
No.
I was just trying to survive at first. The audience clapped. I stood in my borrowed heels, holding a mic, scanning the crowd for any familiar face. There were none. No family. No Amelia. Not even a card from home. And still, I smiled. Because the truth is, I didn't need them to clap for me anymore. Their absence used to feel like a hole. Now it was just space. Quiet. Peaceful. One of our seniors gave a little speech that day. A man named Thomas. He said, "This place didn't just teach me how to use a tablet. It gave me my dignity back." And that woman right there.
He pointed at me.
Made me believe I was still worth learning. I couldn't speak for a full minute. I just pressed my hand to my heart and nodded. Because that was all I'd ever wanted. Not fame. Not applause. Just to matter. So yes, the world outside might still see me as the girl who gave up. The one who walked away from her potential. The one who didn't get a wedding invite. But inside these walls, the ones I built, I am something entirely different. I am not the crack in the family photo. I am the frame around 1,000 news stories. Each one bright. Each one brave. Each one blooming in the silence. The wedding was in early September. Golden hour light. Outdoor venue. Everything curated and flawless. I wasn't invited, but I ended up there anyway. Not as a guest. Not even as a plus one. I was helping cater. Not because I had to. Bright Connect had grown strong by then, but because a volunteer friend of mine owned a bakery and was short-staffed that weekend. I agreed without knowing who the bride and groom were. Until I saw them. Amelia, my sister, and Dylan, her groom. The same Dylan who used to bring me coffee when I studied late at the university library. Who'd stayed up with me through panic attacks. Who once told me, "You make everything feel like it's possible." I hadn't seen him since I dropped out. Turns out, he hadn't just stayed in touch with Amelia. He'd stayed close. Eventually, too close. I stood behind a table of fruit tarts, hands trembling under plastic gloves. Trying not to look obvious. trying not to remember. They hadn't told me. No message. No warning. I stared at the champagne flutes until they blurred. About halfway through the evening, someone tapped me on the shoulder. "I hope I'm not bothering you," she said. I just had to say, "Thank you." She looked vaguely familiar, mid-30s, elegant dress, a sincerity in her eyes that caught me off guard. "I'm sorry," I said. "I think you have me confused with." She cut me off. "No, you're Haley, right? Bright Connect." She smiled. "I thought it was you." I blinked.
Yes.
"That's me." Her voice softened. "My father used your program. He passed away last spring, but before that you helped him find himself again." I felt the air go still. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a phone. Scrolled to a photo.
My dad, she said.
It was Thomas, the man who called me his digital daughter. "My name's Claire. I'm his daughter. I wanted to meet you in person. I didn't expect it to be here, of all places." I didn't know what to say. So I nodded and listened. Claire went on. "He emailed me for the first time in over a decade. He FaceTimed my daughter, his granddaughter, for the first and only time before he died. He told me he felt seen. Because of you." My hands were shaking now. Not from nerves. From the weight of being remembered. She leaned in slightly. "Bright Connect changed everything for our family. And I don't think people tell you enough, but what you do, it matters. Deeply." Behind her, Amelia laughed in slow motion, raising her glass in a toast. Oblivious. Dylan glanced over. Our eyes met.
He froze.
And for one brief second, it felt like the entire wedding paused. The music, the lights, the clinking forks, all of it. He started walking toward me. Claire noticed and stepped aside. I turned to face him, not out of anger, but out of some strange mixture of closure and curiosity. "Haley," he said, breath caught in his throat. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I wasn't invited," I replied. He looked down, ashamed. "Amelia didn't. She said you probably wouldn't want to come. That you were busy with your thing." "My thing?" I said, eyebrows raised. He fumbled. "I mean, Bright Connect. I've heard about it. Actually, one of my coworkers, her dad used it. She told me it changed his life." The irony hit me hard. Like life was handing me a script I didn't audition for, but somehow had memorized. "Did you ever think to reach out?" I asked. He hesitated. "Honestly, I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. After everything." I nodded slowly. Maybe I wouldn't have. But the truth finds its own way to speak, whether we listen or not. He looked older.
Softer.
Like he knew he'd made the wrong choice and couldn't undo it. "Congratulations," I said, gesturing to the venue, the guests, the glow of the fairy lights. He nodded. "Thank you." Then came a pause. A deep, awkward silence. Finally he whispered, "You look strong." It wasn't a compliment. It was a reckoning. I walked away before he could say more. Claire found me again near the exit. "Sorry if I interrupted something earlier," she said gently. "You didn't interrupt," I smiled. "You arrived right on time." She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from her father. I hadn't known it existed. It read, "Dear Haley, if no one's told you lately, you are the reason some of us get to end life with dignity instead of despair. That's not small. That's legacy." I folded it and placed it in the pocket of my apron, not because I needed the words, but because they belonged to a version of me that had nearly disappeared. Later that night, when the venue was empty and the last tray was packed, I stood alone under a string of hanging lights. I stared at the altar, the flowers, the place where Amelia had said "I do." And then I turned around, walked to my car, and drove away, not because I was broken, but because I wasn't. I hadn't demanded attention. I hadn't begged for a seat at the table. I had simply lived a life of purpose. And then, like truth always does, it walked in by itself and refused to stay quiet. A few weeks passed after the wedding. I didn't hear from Dylan or Amelia, and truthfully, I didn't expect to. I had returned to my rhythm, early mornings, working from the sunroom where my cat napped beside the window, afternoons filled with onboarding calls, emails, quiet walks around the block. Life didn't rush to change just because one moment had shifted. But I had. That night under the wedding lights had sealed something in me. Not closure in the dramatic, cinematic sense. Not a perfect ending.
But peace. Quiet. Warm.
Undeniable. One morning, I opened my inbox and saw a name I hadn't read in years.
Mom.
The subject line read, "If you have a minute." I stared at it for almost 5. Then I clicked. "Haley, I don't know if this will make things better or worse, but I've been thinking a lot about you lately. About what you've built." I saw that video Claire posted online, the one where she talked about her dad and how your work gave him back his dignity. I watched it 3 times. "I'm sorry I never asked about what you were doing."
Or tried to understand.
I think I was afraid to look past my own disappointment. But I'm proud of you. Truly. Love, Mom. There were no emojis. No exclamation marks. Just raw, sincere words from a woman who didn't know how to apologize.
But did anyway.
Later that day, my brother Miles sent me a photo. It was from Dad's old desk drawer. A printed flyer from my early days at Bright Connect. Creased, faded, but kept. "Guess he was more supportive than he ever let on," Miles texted. I smiled. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. It was like looking at a younger version of myself through glass and finally waving hello. I never responded to Dylan. He tried, once. A DM on Instagram, short and awkward. "I'm happy you're doing well." I really am. I liked the message. Nothing more. It didn't need more. That chapter wasn't unfinished. It was just over. People think forgiveness is about declaring it out loud, making it official, tying the bow. But sometimes, forgiveness is choosing not to carry something anymore, letting it fall quietly in a place where no one watches, and walking away lighter. That's what I did. No speech. No ceremony. Just release. A few months later, I stood on a small stage at a local nonprofit gala. Bright Connect had just surpassed 100,000 users across 6 states. The spotlight felt soft. The applause was real. But it wasn't the loudness that moved me. It was the subtle weight of my own breath. The quiet steadiness in my voice. I didn't feel like an imposter anymore. I didn't crave validation from the wrong places. I wasn't looking for someone else to say, "You made it." Because I already had. In my own way. On my own terms. A girl came up to me after the gala. Barely 20. Wearing oversized glasses and hope like a badge. She said, "I watched your story on YouTube. The wedding one. I thought I was the only one who got left out like that." I nodded. "You're not." She smiled and whispered, "You made me feel like maybe I could still do something important, even if no one sees it yet." That's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It never really was. I walked home that night through the chilly Portland streets. Leaves rustled around my boots. The sky was a soft gray, like it couldn't decide whether to cry or smile. And I thought about all the versions of me I'd buried over the years. The girl who tried to impress her mother. The one who stayed up for Dylan's messages. The dropout everyone whispered about. I loved her. Every version. Not because they were perfect, but because they kept going. Even when the door stayed closed. Even when the invitation never came. Peace doesn't arrive like a parade. It's not confetti or applause. It's an email from your mother. A note in an envelope from a stranger. A young woman telling you she finally feels seen. It's being able to sit in silence with your own story and feel no shame. It's knowing you never needed the wedding to be whole. Because you had your own kind of celebration all along. A celebration of self-worth. Of quiet victories. Of choosing to stay. And choosing to rise. If you've ever stood in the shadows of someone else's celebration, if you've ever watched people you once loved move on without looking back, if you've ever asked, "Why wasn't I invited?" Or worse, did I ever matter to them at all? This story is for you. You're not alone. You're not forgotten. You are not invisible, No matter how many times the world has looked through you. I know what it's like to feel like an afterthought. To give, and still be seen as the one who walked away. To rebuild quietly, hoping someone might notice. But let me tell you something. You don't need an invitation to become whole. You don't need applause to be important. You don't need to be seated at their table to prepare your own. There's power in the path no one claps for. And there's grace in choosing yourself, again and again. I used to think my story only mattered if it had an audience. If it proved something. If it erased the embarrassment of the dropout, the meltdown, the family's silence. But that's not true. Stories matter even when they're quiet. Even when they don't trend. Even when they unfold far from the spotlight. Especially then. Because real life doesn't always offer a dramatic climax. Sometimes it offers small confirmations. A stranger's thank you. An old email. A girl in glasses saying she finally believes in herself. And those things, they last longer than applause. I want you to think of the thing you're building. Maybe no one gets it yet. Maybe they laugh. Maybe they say you changed. Or that you've wasted potential. Let them talk.
Keep going.
The people who need what you're creating, they'll find it. They'll find you. And they'll be grateful you didn't stop. I don't know where you're watching from. Maybe you're in a tiny apartment, wondering if your choices were mistakes. Maybe you're surrounded by family, but still feel unseen. Or maybe you've walked away from everything familiar, just to find yourself. Whatever your story is, I hope you know it's not over. It's not ruined. It's just unfolding. And there's beauty in the middle chapters, too. Some people won't ever say sorry. They won't realize what they missed. That's not your fault. You don't need their permission to become the person you were always meant to be. You just need your own compassion, your own resilience, your own quiet decision to keep showing up for yourself. To the person who was never chosen, you're not unworthy. You're rare. To the person who gave everything and got silence in return, your value doesn't shrink because others can't see it. And to the person who thought their story had to end with rejection, it doesn't. Sometimes the greatest love story is the one you write with yourself. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for holding space for a story that wasn't about fame or revenge or perfection, but about something gentler, something stronger, about surviving invisibility and becoming undeniable. This channel isn't for loud wins. It's for soft victories, for second chances, for the ones still figuring it out. So, if you've ever been forgotten, if you've ever felt like you didn't belong at someone else's table, just know, you are building your own. And someday, someone will sit across from you, look you in the eyes, and say, thank you for not giving up. Your story made room for mine. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what you're holding on to, or what you're letting go of. There's someone out there who needs to hear your story next, and I'll be right here, waiting to listen. And to share more stories that remind you, you were never invisible, just becoming visible to the right people, at the right time. Thank you for being here. See you in the next story.